Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thank you so much for your time today. Today's content is going to be a little longer, a little lengthier than what we traditionally provide. However, the subject matter is so important, it's so delicate, it's so timely that I would ask that you would give us grace, patience, and most importantly, love as we all navigate through these very difficult conversations. Here it is, race and education and how we can move forward. Thanks.
Welcome to Race and Education. How do we move forward? My name is Chris Jones, and I'm the proud principal of Thomasdale High School, the best high school in the Commonwealth of Virginia. For the past 14 years, I've served as a teacher, teacher coach, school administrator, and now as a principal. Before that, I served 6 years in the United States Army as an airborne ranger.
Wait. Bro, you was in the Army?
Yes, sir.
We known each other all this time. I don't even know who you are. Well, first of all, thank you for your service.
No, thank you.
What's going on, y'all? My name is Humble Tip. I'm a rapper, motivational speaker. There's a couple of other things I dabble in as well. But I am the president of Beautiful Tomorrow Incorporated. Basically, what we do is we go across the country and we encourage, empower, and inspire students, middle and high school, to pursue their dreams, achieve their goals. I'm passionate about youth advocacy. Last year we were in roughly like 88 schools, about 70,000 students nationwide. So I'm really blessed with the opportunity to pour wisdom into the next generation of young people who are going to progress this country to heights we've never seen. So it's a dope opportunity to be here today. The conversations that we have today are going to be fruitful, they're going to be productive, they are very timely. With that being said, it's important for us to notify you that sometimes this ain't gonna get like a little uncomfortable. And sometimes you might cringe a little bit at some of the talking points, but this conversation is well overdue for this country. And so let me bounce it back to Principal Jones over here. What are you hoping that we kind of achieve, or achieve might be too naive of a word? What sort of progress do you hope that we can accomplish in the brief time that we have to talk about this today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, it's first and foremost my personal growth, to be able to have a conversation with you, so that I can listen and learn. I think it's important, as you said, well overdue. It's a needed conversation that we have to have, and if we can serve as models for other people to see, all right, this is how you have that conversation. Okay. These are things that you can say. These are the things that that you can work through together. So to be a model, I also have intentions to be influential, and if I'm going to be an agent of change, I've got to help that change happen. Okay. And if I believe that if eradicating racism starts with conversations, I can't be the one on the sideline not having the conversation. So it's time for me to speak up, and it's time for me to listen. So that's why I'm here.
Okay. Let me backtrack a little bit. You said something about your school just now. What did you say?
I said we're the best high school in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And hey, look, and you've been to 88 schools this year, with us being one of them. So you can speak to it.
Virginia's a big.
You can speak to it. You can speak to it.
You're saying you're the best school.
That's it. We back it up.
It's a lot of smoke that come with that statement. And so you're
right. Okay. Hey, look. We want that smoke, and we bring that fire.
Hey, shots. That's not on me. So, with all the schools that I've gone to, I would say what I hope that we can achieve today or accomplish is opening dialogue. So, with my organization, we travel to such a variety of there's ethnic variety, there's cultural variety, there's economic variety, and we hit schools all through those different spectrums, even faith and religious variety, and we hit schools in all those different perspectives. And so what we've seen is that Title I school in Southeast DC might operate drastically, operates drastically different from that school in Ohio or affluent areas in Northern Virginia. And it's not to shame a school or anything like that, but there are deep reasons as to why there's such a ridiculous disparity on the types of education, the quality of education, the level of education that are provided to different communities. And I think that it's important that we do a deep dive into why a lot of those things are the way that they are and what we can do collectively to close that gap. Because if we close that gap, then we all benefit as a country. We all benefit when every student in this country, every youth in this country has a higher quality of education, which better prepares them to achieve greater in the future, which better equips us as a country to be what we claim we are.
All right. Well, before we can really dive in, you said a lot about moving forward. You said a lot about growth and where do we go from here? It's part of the title, how do we move forward, of our conversation. I think it's important before we get into that is to talk about where we are as a country, where we are as an educational system. What is the current reality? And for me,
because you're in it.
Yeah.
Like you're in it. You talking to students. I'm gonna pray for you because you're talking with parents who can often be worse than the students. And so, but there is, your school, like every school, has its own fingerprint, has its own identity. And so in the most politically correct way, so that no parent out there is offended, how would you describe the culture at your school and one, where your school is, but also where does your school compare with what you believe other schools are? And then I'll be able to give a breakdown on, in my travels in the past 4 years across the entire country, what I've seen are some consistencies relating to race and education.
Yeah, no, and that's great because I was thinking really where we are right now, fighting two pandemics. You know, we've got COVID-19 as a pandemic that we're fighting. And we've got racial injustice that we're fighting, and it's really the health pandemic with quarantine and with adjusting new lives, the things that we used to take for granted and be able to do, we can no longer do. It's life is not the same on that side. And
hold on 1 second. Beautiful. Tomorrow, we don't have a huge budget, so we're going to be talking to the cameraman through this presentation. Are we in focus? Game time.
All right. That's good because we both like.
It's about to get real authentic for the people right now.
No, it's all good. So with those, with the health pandemic, life is not the same. I mean, in schools, for our school, we're starting virtually, and we've had to make some serious adjustments. I mean, everybody did. In mid-March, I mean, the country pretty much shut down.
Absolutely.
And we were forced to do things we never thought we would have to do, and we were forced to live in a way that I would say many of us took for granted that we were living before. So that's one side of it and where we are. The other side with racial injustice, it is on the forefront.
Okay.
And for our students, really for them trying to navigate both of these pandemics, they want to have the conversation. They want to be part of the change. They want to see the change. They want to lead the change. And they're prime in that generation to stop it, to end it. And so I think for us, and this is across the country, this is educational system, this is drilling right down to my school, Thomas Dale High School, finding out ways to be the people we need to be while we're fighting 2 pandemics?
So, man, there's so much weight that we need to dive into with that. But you're blessed in that you do have students, and I can't speak to every school, but certainly with Thomas Dell, I have been able to see, participate, experience that your school is not shying away from this issue that has been an issue for multiple centuries in this country. Yeah. And that's not to tear down this country. I love it. Wouldn't want to be anywhere else in the world, but that's just to highlight opportunities for us to grow. So every principal, however, is not blessed with the opportunity to principal a school that has a staff and a student body and even some parents that are so proactive. What would you say to that principal that is passionate about this particular social justice? However, the parents might be on the wrong side of history, and unfortunately, they will inoculate their kids with harmful and destructive ideologies that will continue this system of oppression that leaves people depressed. So for that principal, for that teacher that's like, I want to make this change, but I don't got the squad with me. For that principal that's like, I want to make the change, but I have no support. What do you say to that? Because they probably want to do something like this, but they are petrified that if they do something like this, they're not going to have a job tomorrow. What do you say to that academic advisor?
I think what you just said is what makes the conversation hard. What you just said is what makes action hard, and what you just said is what makes change hard. And if we don't confront the hard here and the hard here and the hard here, the system will just perpetuate. Those racist ideas stem to protect and defend racist policy. And racist policy is put in place to protect and defend power, economic advantage, supremacy of the color of my skin. So to the principle that you're describing here, I would say first, dig deep inside. Like, who are you? What are your experiences? How have your life experiences shaped who you are and what you believe in? And then you need to take a deep, hard look into, am I afraid because I'm making somebody uncomfortable? And the people I'm making uncomfortable, is it to protect the racist ideas, the racist policy, the racist power, the supremacy? Am I protecting that? And then I would encourage you to look at the students who you're sacrificing to protect that. And if you have one student of color in your school, is that student worth sacrificing to protect what we've come to know as white fragility? And that's protecting the feelings, that's protecting whatever it is that you're protecting. And it's the fear that drives away from conversation. It's the fear that drives away from action. It's the fear that drives away from change. And it's the fear that's going to perpetuate the problem. And until we strike through the fear, it's only going to keep going. And it's been going for 600 years, specifically in this country, for 400. It's never going to break if we don't break the fear.
I'm with it. What I've seen in my years of travel, speaking back to that disparity that I was talking about, is this issue of racism is not as overt. I still believe that it's very prevalent. I still believe that it is very present. However, it has evolved to the point whereas it has learned the times, and so it knows it must be discreet. It knows that it can still be as persistent, it just cannot be overt, because now it is not viewed as attractive. Many people still view it as acceptable, it's just not attractive. So now we gotta do it sneaky, sly, and manipulate. And everyone doesn't operate like that. I'm gonna stamp many of my comments with this kind of what they do at the end of the commercials. They say all the opinions of blah, 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 you know, because what I don't want is I don't want those well-intentioned administrators and principals to feel as if we coming for their neck right now, because we need those allies. You are mandatory, you are appreciated, you are a benefit to this cause. And so I do not want to distance you with my vocabulary. However, we do got to keep this real. We do got to keep it raw. But it's very discreet. And so I've seen the teacher that's been teaching for 20 years. They're tired. They're not really looking to innovate anything new. They're really just trying to wrap it up so they can get whatever it is that they're going to get when they retire. And they're accustomed to, oh man, these kids, they just don't want to learn. Oh man, these kids, they just don't want to do right. All they want to do is just the wrong thing. They are not giving any sort of attention to the perspective of that kid. There's an incredible poem. I want to say it might have came out 2018. I hope that I'm correct with that. I could be wrong. You guys can fact check me. But it was written by a student. His name is Joshua T. Dickerson. And it's called "'Cause I Ain't Got a Pencil." It's not the most eloquent poem. It's not a soliloquy. It's not verbose vocabulary. But if bullseye is the only word that I can say. And it reads this, it's very quick. It reads, I woke myself up because we ain't got an alarm clock. Dug in the dirty clothes basket because ain't nobody washed my uniform. Brushed my hair and teeth in the dark because the lights ain't on. Even got my baby sister ready because my mama wasn't home. Got us both to school on time to eat us a good breakfast. Then when I got to class, the teacher fussed because I ain't got a pencil. That reality that every American doesn't have the same income, the same opportunity, the same access is very present in that poem. And when we speak on the issue of race, one of the main concerns I have is that people have tricked themselves to believe that they aren't racist, and in the same breath, never once can just try to see it from the perspective of this young minority, low-income student who lives a vastly different life from the middle, two parents, dual income. And there's this idea that, oh, you know, I'm not racist because I haven't considered their perspective, which is true. You're not racist just because you haven't considered those other people's perspectives. But that presentation does inadvertently assist those who are racist. So I just see so much of that. That's kind of where I believe that we are as a country. The fact that we're here shows progress, shows advancement, and hopefully we can do our part to trying to tear down those walls, uplift the student, uplift the teacher who is doing the right thing, and encourage the teacher who's been going about it the wrong way to go about it in a healthier way.
Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you talk about being able to take the perspective. You know, we talk a lot about empathy, and we talk a lot about understanding, and how those two things are different from sympathy. You know, for me, in my understanding of sympathy, I define sympathy as a code word for low expectations. I feel sorry for you, so I don't expect that you'll be able to to reach the heights or for you to be able to reach these high expectations. Oh, well, it's okay, baby, you can't do that. I feel sorry for you.
Savior complex.
Yeah. And so where empathy comes in is it's doing everything that I can to try and see the world through your eyes, never having stepped foot in your shoes. So how can I understand fully? But doing what I can to understand and not just saying, I haven't gone through the same experiences as you, but I can attach to the emotion you feel as a result of those experiences because I too have felt that emotion.
So let me ask you this, man. And I don't even know why we have a script because we're gonna go so far off this thing. What do you think prevents some teachers from displaying empathy, just the attempt to understand what this kid is going through, who could be a minority, but let's not get it twisted. There are Anglo-Saxons who have low income situations, but the teacher that just refuses to say, let me even try to see this from the student's perspective. What contributes that? What aids that? What makes that okay?
Yeah. Well, and before I dive into that, I'm glad you differentiated the class. You know what I mean? Because there's intersectionality when we talk about race and gender and class and sexual orientation.
Get into it.
And to take it a step further, even religious belief.
Talk about it.
So we have teachers in this country, and I'm only going to speak to my teachers. My teachers at Thomas Dale, awesome. Amazing teachers, amazing educators. So we have teachers who have taken on the challenge of developing their empathy muscle, to be able to look within and figure out what are my experiences and how are my experiences shaping my lens through I'm looking at this situation.
And you said that is called developing their empathy muscle.
That's what I call it.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah, so developing your empathy muscle to get better at stopping, blocking who you are, because and I'm only going to speak for me, I've got to block my bias, and my bias is shaped by my experiences. I have to look within and say, look, this is the life that you've lived for the past 43 years, and your life has shaped how you view the world. And how I view the world has been shaped by those experiences, so I've got to block it, check it, and then be ready to accept and enter into and possibly begin to maybe not see the world through your eyes, but to understand your experience and to attach to the emotion that you're feeling with that. And so what I will say is this, that's not easy. And it takes a lot of time to be able to do. And teachers right now are stressed. Even before the crisis.
Yeah.
Even before COVID-19, and we've had ebbs and flows in history of outcries for racial justice. Ebbs and flows. Right now it's at an all-time high, I feel.
All right. I would agree.
But teachers are stressed. And if you think about, and for high school teachers, 120 to 150 students that they're responsible for. And what we ask them to do, I mean, our motto is every night, every day. Okay. And what we ask them to do is develop a deep understanding for each and every one of your students. Their cultural norms, their social construct, their strengths, their weaknesses, their likes, their dislikes, their goals, their dreams. What prerequisite knowledge they're coming to you with, like know them and shape the high school experience around them as opposed to the other way around. And so when you do that 120 times over, that's a heavy lift and it's a lot of time. And sometimes cutting corners is a little bit easier. And every corner that I cut is another because I ain't got no pencil.
So this has always been something that I've been curious with all the different schools that I go to. I see this often. And as a principal, as someone in education, you guys are constantly in this tug of war with the student and the child, the kid, the person.
Yes.
And this is what is best for the holistic development of the child. But we got to hit these numbers. We've got to get this average. We've got to get through this percentage of the curriculum. Sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes even to the detriment of the holistic development of the kid. And then when you add on to that the issue of race, lack of opportunity, classism, it presents an overwhelming burden to particular demographics and communities. Mm-hmm. So for that teacher who really, really, really wants to help close this gap of of academic disparity, and who really wants to give that kid exactly everything they need as a student, but also help them develop into a healthy young adult, on top of the issues of racism, like how it can seem like an insurmountable.
Yeah, it is overwhelming. I mean, if you think about what it takes to educate a child, you know that it takes a village to raise a child.
Amen.
And all of us, and I try to check myself when I can, we put a lot of pressure on our teachers. Do it all.
Facts.
Help them with their mental health, help them with their social, emotional development, get them academically ready, teach them what grit, resilience, compassion, humility, gratitude, teach them all that. Mm-hmm. Do it all. You got 6.5 hours, 5 days a week, do it all.
And keep them at a 3.0.
And keep them at a 3.0. And oh, by the way, don't do it in such a way that creates disparities between kids who don't look the same, who don't act the same, who don't talk the same, who don't go home to the same living room as you do. So tremendous pressure, a tremendous burden, and I think, and I'm gonna bring it back to this conversation, because the more we have these conversations, number one, it chips away at the system,
right?
Just a little bit at a time. Here's a little chip away, but it also gathers the community to take a little piece of that pressure off, a little piece of this pressure off. So I don't even remember what your question was that set me to, it was about the pressure
more so just for that teacher who feels like, wow, this job is hard enough, but now when you throw the element of race on it, it's even more difficult. Throw the element of COVID on it, there's even more difficult. So I would say to that teacher who does want to do that, and they're looking at this insurmountable mountain, just what words of encouragement, in about 3 or 4 sentences, what words of encouragement would you give?
Oh, I like that you had to cut me off because I do talk a lot, man. No, it's, number one, you've got this, and although your training didn't prepare you for this, the skills that you've developed over time have well positioned you for this. So number one, you got to believe in yourself. Number two, believe in your colleagues. Now more than ever, it's going to require us to lean on each other to get us through the hard times. Number three, you've got to take some time to educate yourself with regards to race, and that's all of us. Read a book, listen to a podcast, have a conversation with somebody who does not look like you, and really understand.
I'm sorry.
No, that's it. I mean, it's you do not represent all black men.
No, not at all.
Every time I have a conversation with someone who doesn't look like me, it further develops my understanding. It further develops my ability to not make judgments or to prejudge. All right, well, here comes a black male. I've talked to 60 different black males in a different context. I've read these books written by a black male. I've listened to this podcast. It's not about the generalization.
Yeah.
It's about the individual. And if you can approach each individual as an individual,
Facts.
Not as a member of a group.
Facts. Because the end result of every conversation does not have to be resolution. Yeah. Every conversation, the end result doesn't have to be resolution. If you come upon resolution, that's dope. But every conversation, the end result does not have to be resolution. If more people would attack conversation, enter conversation with a desire to gain perspective, I think that is a much more practical destination.
Yeah.
Did I gain perspective from that conversation? My life experience has been, once so much perspective has been gained, resolution eventually follows one of those conversations. Maybe not conversation 2, maybe not conversation 7, maybe it's conversation 19.
Yeah.
But once every person is looking, let me understand why you see it that way. Let me understand how you came upon that sort of conclusion. For the most part, not all the time. Sometimes there'll never be resolution for certain things. But gaining perspective is incredible. So as we talk about the importance of empathy, understanding, perspective, right? Some people have just tuned us out just now. Like, what, they want me to understand people, they want me to empathize with people, they want me to, yes, that's how we progress collectively as a country, because it ain't just about you. There's a common phrase that predominantly white people say, and I do believe that for many, it is well-intentioned, and there is a sincere ignorance as to the weight of this statement is. And we're going to dive right into that. So you always have that but there's always a group of white people that are like, no, I didn't mean that, or no, you misunderstood, or no, that's not what I was going for. I don't even see color.
It's that color blindness.
I'm colorblind, I don't see color.
Yeah.
For me, as more melanated than someone, I've never understood. What does that mean? I think I understand what you're trying to say, but if there was a person who was 7 feet tall and they robbed somebody and the cop said, well, what'd he look like? And the person would be like, oh, well, they had a face and they were wearing clothes. I don't see color, so I can't tell you what color clothes they were wearing. And, they were, they had a face and they were wearing clothes. And that officer said, hey, I need a little more to go. Like, how tall were they? Oh, I don't see height. That would sound ludicrous to us. What do you mean? This is one of the most identifiable, distinguishable aspects of a person. What do you mean you don't see this? Oh, no, I'm sorry. What I mean is I don't judge people based off their height. Oh, you can say that. But when you tell someone who's a different color than you that you don't see color, it makes me feel like, yo, this is one of the most identifiable agents of my entire character. Now, my identity is not in my color. My identity is not in the fact that I'm an African American, though I love being an African American, and if I could do life twice, I wouldn't come back as anything else. I love who I am. But my identity is not in my skin color. However, when you disregard my skin color, you're disregarding a huge part of who I am. So can you speak more to that?
Yeah, I think so it's really, I don't even know how many things it is, but the first thing I'm going to address is what you said. It's about the intention, right?
Facts.
I intended to protect any semblance of racism that I might have, whether I know it's there or not, by saying that you're colorblind. What I'm hoping that our viewers take away from the intention versus the impact is that it doesn't mean what you meant to say. It means how did the other person take it, interpret it? How did it make them feel? When we say colorblind, it is 100% discrediting any piece of identity, whether that's part of your identity or not. We completely disregard the social history that anyone in your ancestry went through. We are completely disregarding any cultural norms. that you have, we're completely disregarding the fact that unlike me, and this is my third point, unlike me, you have to think about your color. I have never, ever had to think about my color. I can say I'm colorblind because I've never had to think about my color when I walk into an interview, when I walk into a convenience store, when I get pulled over by a police officer, when I go to the court to pay my property tax.
Working
there is
in
no
corporate
assumption that I'm there because I'm a felon.
Facts.
But you know, so the colorblind thing, it protects a white person from what racism might be there, what racist ideas might be there.
That's facts.
It disregards anything about your history, your culture, or anything. When I say that I don't see your color, what do you mean you don't see my color? And then the third thing it does is it reveals my white privilege because I've never had to think about the color of my skin.
So let's stay right there. Let's stay right there. We're running out of time. How would you describe white privilege as a white man in America in 2020? How would you even describe? Because there's a whole community of people out there who says there's no such thing as white privilege. These are fabricated trigger words that political agendas have created in order to stir up emotions from a specific side in order to achieve a certain outcome. So all of that jargon to say, white privilege don't exist.
Yeah, so, well, the first piece that I'll speak to is what we just talked about. I've never had to think about the color of my skin. That's a part of humanity. For a black person to have to think about when they walk into a convenience store, I gotta mind the color of my skin. This police officer's pulling me over, I gotta mind the color of my skin. I'm walking into an interview, I'm the only black person walking into this interview on an 8-person panel and it's all white people around the table.
With dreadlocks.
With dreadlocks. It's a privilege to not have to think about the color of your skin. It's a privilege to not have it as a potential obstacle. It's a privilege to not have to think, if I say, do, or act a certain way, I'm gonna be treated differently because I'm black. I would also say, because of the color of my skin, my vote has never counted 3/5 of a person. I would also say that in this country, we didn't bring over white slaves. Although originally there were different colors of skin.
Of course.
With slavery.
Okay.
Although that's a piece of humanity, it was never an obstacle. And therefore it is a privilege because I haven't had to think about it. I haven't had the obstacles put in my way because of the color of my skin. I don't have policies in place that voter suppression, the 3/5 compromise. I mean, we can go through history and look at how the color of my skin has allowed me a clear path to success. And that's white privilege right there.
So I would say this to Mr. White Man, Mr. White Woman who's watching this right now and maybe you feel beat down. Again, I'm the supportive, I'm the motivational speaker, I'm the encourager. If you do finally realize that, hey, man, you know what? I've never had to think of some of the things that other minorities have to think about simply because they are minorities. Oh man, I feel bad. I hate my white privilege. No, please, no, don't do that.
Got you where you're going.
Don't waste your white privilege now.
That's right.
But at the same time, there's a whole community of black people mad at me for saying that right now. But we're gonna get these jokes off. And so, but check it. What I'm sincerely saying is, it is what it is. Like I am not to shame you because you have white privilege. However, you not acknowledging the reality that there are certain obstacles that you will not hit simply because of your ethnicity, that is an issue. That is something that must be addressed, that must be dialogued, that must be wrestled into submission. So should you feel bad because you have white privilege? Absolutely not. Should you use your white privilege to attempt to level the playing field? I would encourage you to entertain that idea. Should you be aware that, you know what? There are things that this person has to deal with that I'll never have to deal with. I need to know that that's a reality, because knowing that allows me to empathize with what this other person is going through. They're going through something that I will never have to go through, simply because of the color of their skin. And it's due to my white privilege. I'll never have to experience that. My desire is just for you to come to that understanding. Once you come to that understanding, if there's a shred of humanity in you, then you'll say, okay, well, what can I do to help out my brothers and my sisters? I'm not the person that says, hey, just give everybody a handout. Nah, you gotta thug it out, you gotta get it from the mud, you gotta work. But if you can see that the odds are stacked against your brother, your sister, then at least for me, I wanna say, how can I help them? How can I alleviate this unnecessary burden? So we'll get ready to transition to about one more spot, and then we're gonna get ready to wrap it up, and we're certainly gonna have to return if you guys are interested. If you want a part two, leave us a thumbs up, leave a comment saying, hey, we need part two, because there's just so much to unpack in this conversation of race and education. How do we move forward? We're gonna jump. This is all right. We're gonna jump to this concept of implicit bias.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna throw you the alley-oop. I'm not gonna set it up. You're gonna take the ball out, dribble it down court, and we'll see where we go with this.
No, I love it. And,
implicit bias.
And we touched on it a little bit earlier in the conversation. It's for how long has the word bias been taboo? Oh, I'm not biased. Because we associate the word, in the past, we've associated the word bias with racist. We've associated the word bias with stereotypes, bias with preferential whatever. But the truth is, what bias is, and it could be explicit or implicit. If it's explicit, that's what we typically associate racism with. Mm-hmm. Like, all right, well, at least I'm not doing that. Mm-hmm. So I'm not racist because I'm not doing that. But the implicit bias is, everyone has it. Everyone. Doesn't matter the color of your skin, it doesn't matter your sexual orientation, it doesn't matter how you identify your gender. Everyone has implicit bias.
What's an example of implicit bias?
So implicit bias, without getting too controversial, is I prefer summer over winter, because in my life experiences, I had enjoyable childhood experiences during the summer. Okay. So I prefer the summer over the winter. That is a bias that I have. It doesn't mean that I hate the winter. I just prefer summer over winter.
Would an implicit bias be every person who has all of those tattoos is up to no good?
That would be acting on your bias. That would be using your bias as a stereotype. That would be not recognizing your bias is there to be able to block it. Now, in your life experiences, if you've known 30 people with head-to-toe tattoos and all 30 of them have behaved in a certain way, in your experience, this is how I expect that person to act. So I now have a lens. Whether I act on that lens or not,
and we all have that,
is a choice. Everyone has implicit bias.
In my life, whenever, this is just me, I'm implicitly biased against Rockwallers who don't got chains on. There's been two situations. I was in the streets. Rockwallers ain't had chains on. I quickly turned into a 40-yard sprinter. Deion Sanders in his prime, I was gone. Yeah. So I'm implicitly biased. Yeah. If I see a Rockwaller with no chain on, bam.
That's right.
But I can admit my bias. We keep hitting the same doors and the same obstacles with this refusal to admit and acknowledge.
Well, and sometimes it's a blind spot. And you were hitting on it right before we transitioned. You started hitting on what some potential blind spots are. When you start getting uncomfortable, that's a blind spot coming at you. It might be the white privilege showing up. When you start to say, are we still talking about race? Like, are these two dudes really in this studio talking about race?
400 years
That's
ago.
a blind spot showing up. That is your white privilege showing up.
We had a black president. Racism don't exist.
Yeah, we are not in a post-racial society.
Come on, man. That was so long ago.
So to go back to the implicit bias.
Didn't y'all have that march? like 80.
Which one, the Million Man March?
I think y'all had that march. Y'all had a couple of marches.
That's right.
Y'all ain't over it by now?
That's right. Yeah, that's a blind spot showing up. So, with implicit bias.
Hold on, I gotta say this. Even though I present that with comedy and it comes off as facetious, there are literally people's perspectives that mirror that sarcastic, snarky, condescending tone that I just presented. That was not pulled out of thin air. There are communities of people who legitimately say, they're still complaining about this thing. They got their president. What else do they want? This is not a real issue. Everyone is making this bigger than it is. In 2020, people do not mistreat people because of race. In 2020, people do not implement laws and systems with the knowledge, with the intention of it suppressing an entire ethnicity. That doesn't happen in 2020. So when I say that with that sarcasm and that comedy, it's pulled from a real place because unfortunately, these are ideologies and toxic beliefs that people hold and distribute.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it's for a purpose. Some of it is rooted in hate, but not all of it. You talked earlier about, the sneaky, the covert racism, and those are things that are intentionally developed, like saying that, a black person is stronger and more fit. That's why we made them slaves, because they can do the work. We can say, I'm going to own it, white people can create excuses that black people are biologically inferior, which is why we've enslaved them. We can say we enslaved black people to free them from their savage lifestyles. Like, these are racist ideas that were created to protect. I want to have slaves to work on my plantation so that I can become rich, economically exploiting another race and supplanting racist ideas to protect that power and to protect that system, to your point. Back to the implicit bias, because I want to make sure I make this point before we move on. Implicit bias is shaped by two things. One side is your experiences. The other side is the influences that you allow to seep into your thoughts. We are shown that, and I'm just going to use black males as an example. We are shown through media, we are shown through pop culture that black males are hypersexual. We are shown that black males are thugs. We are shown that black males are slick gangster pimps. We are shown we are shown that black males are academically inferior. We are shown that black males are lazy. Like, these are characteristics and generalizations that are pumped through media, pumped through. If you watch a movie, how is it portrayed? And if you allow that to influence and seep in, it is inherently going to influence that bias. And so if you walk up to a black man and you have swallowed the pill that they are hypersexual, slick gangster pimp, lazy, academically inferior, athletic, and if you swallow that, that is ultimately going to impact the way that you interact with that person before a word is even spoken. I might even cross the street so that I don't come near you because I don't trust you.
Now, I'm a man of accountability, and so I cannot allow you to present that information without taking accountability, because not only have those misconceptions of African American males been presented, but in a bizarre change of circumstances, many, not all, let me not say many, some of my counterparts and my peers have actively promoted those misconceptions. And so it's just incumbent upon us, for us to do better, point blank, period, not pointing fingers at anybody else, but for us to do better with presenting ourselves the way that we desire to be seen. Back to implicit bias, then we're gonna jump to one last thing, then we gotta hit them with a to be continued. What would be, bringing it back to education, what would be an example of a teacher who's give us 2 examples of a teacher who says, I don't see color, I'm not implicitly biased, white privilege doesn't exist, all these things we've talked about are just fabricated.
Yeah.
What would be an example of a teacher and 2 implicit biases that they may have regarding the issue of racism, classism, social economic standing? Speak on that.
Man, that's, you put me on the spot with that one.
You gonna step on some toes?
No, I love it, man. It's so I'm going to use 2 examples. One, because we see the biggest racial disparities in 2 pieces. Number 1, it's in our discipline, and number 2, it's in the access to rigorous coursework. You don't walk into an advanced placement class and see a lot of black faces. Where do you see the black faces?
Sports.
In sports,
Okay.
yeah. But I'm talking about in discipline.
Okay.
In the in-school detention room, or they're out of school suspension. So my implicit bias will show up quickly when we call them the D's: disrespect, defiance, and disruption. So my implicit bias will show up because of my experiences. I think that a kid should come to school with their pencil, sit down, open up their book, be ready for my instruction, be quiet for the 90 minutes that I have them, do exactly what it is that I say, turn in all their assignments on time. As soon as the question, why do I have to do that? That's automatically where the bias will show up. And if it just so happens to be a black face, we're going from 0 to 10 a whole lot quicker than if the kid has the same color of skin that I do.
Fascinating.
Now that's real. And so that's where, so our discipline disparities are in the D's, the D codes: disrespect, defiance, and disruption, because there's just a gross misunderstanding. That's what that is. The other side that they show up is in our 0 tolerance policies. And that's on me. That's system. That's not micro, that's macro. So that's an example of discipline. An example of access to rigorous coursework. If I'm an educator, and next year the student can be in a core level class and an honors level class, maybe an AP. My implicit bias can get in the way of because of the color of the kid's skin, and anything that I've either through my experiences or what I've swallowed that media and pop culture have taught me. Well, you can't go into AP because you're lazy. You're lazy because you're a black student. So if that bias, those are 2 examples where bias can show up and get in the way of a student being successful, in particular, our black and brown students.
So for the teacher who says, you know what, when I review myself and when this kid is late, I kind of just tap him on the wrist. When this kid is late, I say, oh, you just can't get it together. So there's a percentage of teachers, of administrators, counselors, principals, possibly even superintendents that are watching this and that are humble enough to internally review how they've educated for the past 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. For those that say, I'm not racist, I know that you are passionate. You're passionate about not being racist is not good enough.
That's right.
You have to be
anti-racist.
Speak on it.
Yeah, so where my level of education and understanding comes from with this is from Ibram Kendi. And he's blown my mind.
I'm sorry?
Ibram Kendi.
Okay.
And he's blown my mind over the past couple of months. I've really sunk my teeth into the concept of you're either racist or you're anti-racist in a moment. It's not that you're labeled that and that's what you are forever. You can say, you can have a racist thought, idea, or speak something that is racist in one moment, and the next moment be anti-racist. But what he says is, you're either racist or you're anti-racist. You're racist by either your action or inaction to eradicate racism and to not think of one race as inferior or superior than the other, or you put ideas and policies in place that clearly indicate that the races are equal, are on level playing field. The I'm not racist, you usually only hear that when someone is defending something that just happened that was in fact racist. And there is no classification for not racist. So what does that mean?
If you say that you're not racist,
then
you're probably racist. No, I'm getting these jokes off you. That doesn't mean that you are. But if you do say that, I do think that you need to internalize the why. Why? Why is it important? Why do you feel it necessary to vocalize, hey, I'm not racist? I think that it's just really, really important for us to dig deep and say that. You know,
why did I need to say that?
Yeah.
Like, what happened that caused me to say, oh, no, I'm not racist.
For every hood, for every Title I school out there that's predominantly 98% Hispanic, 99% African American, there's always a small amount of white teachers. I've seen them, I've worked in them, they're amazing. Those teachers never have to say,
I'm not racist.
I'm not racist, because they've literally given Taquan money out of their pocket to help him out. They've driven this kid whose parents just didn't show up after school to pick them up. They understand the plight. They've done house visits because a kid, they went to the hood, knocked on the door, pulled up at the trap house because this kid has been failing, and they're genuinely compassionate about them. They're like, hey, let me go talk to the parents. Not because I'm better, but because I care about this kid and I just want to make sure that they're in a healthy environment. Those teachers never feel like they need to say, I'm not racist, because their actions speak vastly and echo way further than their words do. But for that teacher that feels like they need to shout for, I'm not racist, I'm not racist, I'm not racist, but they have no actions or activity to show that they are anti-racist.
That's it.
What do you say to them? And it's not that a teacher needs to prove. You know, that it's not that, oh man, you need to prove that you're anti-racist. Go out and do something anti-racist today. Not that. But when the opportunity provides itself, if you are disgusted by racism, if you are fed up with racism, if you cannot stand the sight of racism, then if you are anti-racist, something will disallow you the ability to stand by, see racist activities,
and allow it to happen.
And just be mute. And then after you see the racist activity and someone says, why didn't you say anything? It wasn't my place. I'm not racist, but you know, that's just how Bob is.
And what you said right there is another example of white privilege, because I can hide from it, pretend it didn't happen. I can go to my bubble and I'm not going to deal with it. Yes, that racist thing just happened. And through my silence, that is a racist act, because inaction that perpetuates the racist system or racist idea is racism. It's not anti-racism, because you're not doing anything to level it up. And there's nothing in between racism and anti-racism. And it is very easy to ignore that it happened, not say anything, well, it ain't gonna hurt me. I can go protect myself in my bubble. And for me, I remain silent for far too long. What we're doing right now would have never happened before the tragic incident with George Floyd.
Really?
I didn't have the courage, I didn't have the strength, I didn't have the vocabulary, I didn't have a deep enough understanding. I would protect myself in my white privilege for 42 years, man. And this fire that's not going to be extinguished is relatively new.
Really?
Now, yeah, and I know you've been fighting it all your life, and I just joined the fights on May 30th. And so that's real, that's facts. I've lived a different kind of life that would look not racist. I have not lived an anti-racist life. And so I want to put an underscore on that, is because I've lived my life, I'm not racist. I'm drinking the anti-racist water.
It's fascinating. And this is the perfect place to leave it. And again, if you guys want to see part 2, if you want us to come back, leave a thumbs up, put in the comment section. This needs to be continued because empathy, understanding, perspective, not always trying to find resolution, but desiring perspective. I didn't know that. I didn't know that this was a new season of your life. And there's someone out there in the very beginning of this, maybe there's someone who just tuned in just now, and they're just thinking, why is it important for us to be having these conversations? It'll go away if we stop talking about it. But for people who have had the reformation that you have had, that's exactly why it's important for us to have these conversations. That's exactly why it's important for us to tweet about it.
Yeah.
That's exactly why it's important for us to have the marches. Now, I am in no way supporting vandalism. I am in no way supporting any sort of property destruction. I'm not even a dude who's gonna get on social media and argue with you about stuff. I'm not that guy. I'm not finna go 27 comments back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But there is a polarization that takes place when someone has the boldness and the courage to say things that need to be said.
Yeah.
And when the George Floyd tragedy took place, it thrust this conversation. Generation Z thrust this conversation. Social media thrust this conversation in people's face.
Yep.
And it forced people to say, hey, I am either going to talk about it or I'm going to talk against the protest, which shows which side of the fence you're on, or it says, you know what, I'm just going to ignore it.
That's right.
And think that I haven't selected a side. But that ability to attempt to ignore it and think it's not going to affect you or the people that it's harming is a prime example of white privilege. And in our school systems, just like in every other place of this country, this is something that must be addressed. It must be protested, and collectively, we've got to think of ways to overcome it. Guys, we got to get ready to wrap up. Big homie, Dr. Chris Jones, my man over here. I'm your boy Humble Tip with Beautiful Tomorrow. This has been a discussion on race and education. How do we move forward? It's very multi-layered. I wish we could leave this conversation with all of the answers, but unfortunately, neither one of us are that wise and that intelligent. However, we are wise enough to know that if we can continue to discuss it, being a very intercultural friendship, and if we could present it to you guys in a loving and graceful way, hopefully all of us as a community can work towards our beautiful tomorrow. Stay blessed.